Hey everybody, Zee Garcia here, and welcome to my comparison video between Trekking the National Parks first and second edition. I'm going to be showing you the differences, and in many cases I'll be pointing out which one I like better, how they did that one specific thing, okay? The second one really is pretty different from the original one. They changed a lot of the concepts in the game, but it ultimately sort of feels like the same thing, and thematically the heart of the game is the same. You are traveling around the U.S. and its national parks, visiting them, collecting the cards for those locations if you are the first one to make it there. So the first thing we're going to look at, we're going to remove the boxes here and take a look at the boards. Here we've got the board for the first printing and the second printing, and the main thing you'll notice is that all of the numbers between the connections on the first one are completely gone on the new one, because movement in the game is very different. In the original game, you had to discard a number to equal the passage from one location to another based on distance and difficulty. So for example, to go from the star location down here, it would have taken you a total of 5 from the cards you are discarding. In the new one, every line is simply 1. So if you discard a 5 starting from here, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, okay? So it's a lot easier to jump around, but they did do away with the airports in the new one. There is no concept of airports in that. You can just travel around. Whereas in the original one, you had the starting spot was an airport, and the other places over here had airports as well that allowed you to jump from one location to another. I'm of two minds a little bit. I know that the new one is certainly simpler, which is a lot of what the new version does. The second edition simplifies a lot of the gameplay. But I actually like the original movement. Now, yes, it's a lot slower, and it feels that way in many ways. The game feels a little bit more, like you gotta take your time to get somewhere, versus the new one, you can really zip around this board, because you can discard multiple cards and just go whoop all the way across the board in the new one. But I kind of prefer the original method of moving around the board. Another thing they changed in the new edition is if you move into a location where another player is standing, say discarding a 3, going 1, 2, 3, you will bump them out of that spot and send them back to the starting location. In the new one, if someone was, in the original one rather, if someone was standing there, you simply couldn't go into that spot. Now, sending them back sounds harsh, but as I said, it's very easy to move around the board. So you want to make sure when you end somewhere, you've got business to conduct there. I think it's a good rules update, because having someone go somewhere and plant themselves there and then wait for the cards they need really was kind of a pain in the neck. So the new rules change I do enjoy. These two backs, the original edition and second edition, contain the pebbles, the stones, that you put out on the board at every location and you collect when you stop in that location. The first one had these flattened glass beads, very pretty, but also irregular in many ways. You know, they are not all the same size, but they had sort of an earthy charm to them. They were not bad. And then the new one has these plastic tokens that are all the exact same shape, because they came out of a mold, and while not as shiny, I have to say I like the new ones better. I just like the way they look on the board a little bit more, and they've changed the amount. In the original one, the number of yellow ones is equal to the number of green and the number of orange and so on, and the bonuses you got for that were all the same. Most green, most white, and so on. There were always 5 victory points. In the new one, because there are some stones that are out there in more frequency, the bonuses are going to be different. So you're going to get, for yellow, you're going to get 7. For red, you're going to get 6, and so on. There's also a second place that you would be using in this one. And then in the original one, there was also a bonus for having the most stones in general and the most part cards collected. In the new one, that's not a feature, because every stone is also worth 1 victory point. That was not the case in the original. So in this aspect of the game, my nod goes to the new printing of the game. The player cards that you'll draw and use to both move and complete your visitations to the parks are basically identical. They have the exact same illustrations, but the original printing did have nicer quality cards. They have a nice linen finish, and they just feel better to play with. The new ones feel a little cheaper, though they're not bad, don't get me wrong, and they just sort of feel a little more mass market. These are probably cheaper to produce, I would assume. So the nod here goes to the original production. The wooden pieces for the players are pretty much the same, though the new one does give you a start player token, a cool bear pawn, and each player is also going to have 3 wooden tents that are used in a new mechanism in the game, so a slight nod to the new production here. Here we've got the park cards. The original is the second edition, as well as a player aid, as a little card that will help you play the game. Obviously the new ones are a larger format. They're still going to use photographic illustrations, which I think are very nice. And in fact, in the new ones, they do highlight the artwork a little bit more. And the scores are very different on these, the number of victory points. But that's partly because the scoring has been pretty much reworked from the ground up in the new printing here. All the stones are going to score you 1 victory point. You are going to get victory points from a few other things, and it's just a different concept. Also, the sort of length and cadence of the game, while it stays the same, is arrived at a completely different way. In the original game, you would shuffle these and set a few of them, depending on the number of players, into play, and then replenish from that deck until that specific group of cards was gone. In the new one, that's not the case. You can use all of these, but once someone has 5 of them completed, that will trigger the end of the game. So it's a goal-driven one as opposed to a stack of cards, and you just take from that stack until it is depleted. You're going to have on the back of this one a player aid as well for movement and so forth. And then on the back of this one, some special effects from a brand new mechanism that is to be found in this second printing. Let's take a look at that. In the new game, you have what are called major parks. These have a marking on the board, and you are going to, at the beginning of the game, draw 3 of these randomly, as well as 3 of the normal ones, and place them on the board as well. There will always be 3 of these, the same 3 for the whole game, and the other 3 that are taken and then replenished. And these, if you complete them, if you visit that park, you are going to put your tent there. That's what the tents are for. So if I visit, let's say, the Grand Canyon, I will put my tent on there, and from that point on, I'm going to have a special power. Some of them are a one-time effect. Some of them continue to work for the rest of the game. And that's what these are for. So if I visit the Grand Canyon early in the game, I'm going to get 5 victory points at the end. But also, it lets me know here that when I move, I can move 1 extra space, an extra space further than I would have. So if I want that power in-game, I could visit the Grand Canyon and earn that power. And these are not exclusive. Everyone could go here and earn that power for the game. Just like Acadia over here, and then Denali, Yellowstone, and you've got a couple of more possibilities. As I said, 3 of these will be used in the game. This concept is a brand new idea, and the little special powers you can earn and utilize throughout the game are also a brand new idea. I really like this concept in the new game. I think it works well. Now, for something that was in the original game that they chose not to bring back in the second edition, these postcards. These you could have, if you wanted to, and they were technically a variant. If you wanted to play with them, you would shuffle these up, put them on the table, and you could, as an action, draw 1 of them, and then later on complete it, just like visiting a card, paying the specific resources on here, and displaying this card in front of you from your hand. They would give you a number of victory points. You could complete them anywhere. You did not need to attend or go to any spot on the board in order to score these. These are a neat concept, and the cool thing about it is that if you bought some, if you acquired them with your actions and you never completed them, they would actually count against you. I think they removed these because they were perhaps had some negative sort of connotation to it. They could penalize the players in a negative way, and maybe they were just a little too advanced for the streamlined simplicity of the new one. But then thinking about that, they bring in these special powers that I just showed you. So it's sort of replacing one module, if you would, with a different one here. I like this, don't get me wrong. I really enjoy the major parks concept, but I kind of wish they would have kept a similar idea or the same idea as the postcards as perhaps a variant or something you can choose to do or not do or is always in play in the second version of the game. Because I really like this and I do miss it in the new design. And so that's Trekking the National Parks First Edition and Second Edition. I think ultimately looking at the very core of the game, the way you play and the scoring, I do think I prefer the Second Edition. It just feels a little more interesting. The scoring feels a little tighter, and it's more likely the players are going to take diverging paths to arrive at their strategy, at their score, and those scores are still competitive. I've seen games of the second one in which someone is simply not able to reach parks they want to reach, and they just walk around the board collecting stones. You know what? Each one of those is worth a point. If you get the bonus, that's extra points, and that can be a strong strategy in this game. In the original one, if you collected stones and you lost that race by 1 stone, you got nothing at all. If the bonus went to someone else, they got their 5 points, you got nothing whatsoever. And so that was not really a valid strategy unless you could pretty much guarantee you were going to win. And if you did not, it certainly could hurt. So the new one is very solid. I do miss some of the perhaps more gamery concepts in the first one. I think the new one is perhaps simplified a bit too much, just a hair too much maybe. But for what the game is, for the target audience, I think it's a very solid second edition. And if you feel hesitant about getting the second one because you don't like some of the changes, I would say if you don't have access to the first one, and even if you do, there is nothing wrong with the new one. It's more family friendly, and the scores and the strategies are very strong. So there you go. That's my comparison of these two versions of the game. Thanks for checking this out with me. I'm Zee Garcia. Make sure you go check out the full review of this version of the game. I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com.